Yo. What up? You listening to Bundy 718. It's your boy. And we keeping it 718 Bundy. And we're going to talk a little bit about your boy, Jessie Lee Peterson. I noticed in the past, I'll say like since this year, I noticed that he's been doing an uptick of doing a lot of interviews, and he's hyper selective with it. I noticed it. Follow me. But I was listening to one specifically. It was with a transgender, I guess it's transgender woman. Yeah. So it was an interesting conversation. Actually, it was one of the easiest conversations I've ever seen, especially coming from a gentleman such as Jessie Lee Peterson. And I listened to 3 back to back, and I wasn't exactly selective with it. I think like one came in on on the video play, and then I saw another one that was quite interesting, so I clicked it. Now, I should do one just focusing directly on this one because it was basically addressing transgender, talking to or interviewing a transgender female. The thing I'm not exactly sure what the fallen state is what are you interviewing for? Now I get that he's trying to come around. His whole rhetoric always goes around to like basically I guess the State of the Union. Basically, the United States of America has fallen. I believe he may be some sort of pastor, if I'm not mistaken. But just for the sake of this conversation, because he does talk a lot from scripture, I'm gonna be a little bit reserved on that. Somewhere in the middle of this, I will Google it just to be sure, because I want to say he's a pastor, but I want to make sure that I'm accurate. So up to this point, let's just take that off the table, and I may punch it in later. Just to be corrected, because one thing we do here on the Truth, Logic, and Consistency channel and show, what we do try to do is, even though we're trying to this is more male oriented in terms of how we speak, so we should be able to be loose and not have to be beholden too much to people's feelings. Bob, when we get to like a more of a barbershop joint, we could chop it up a little bit looser. But but for the most part, I like to keep things upstanding, respectable. But most important, truth, logic, and consistency will prevail, though it's going through the lens of a man. In other words, we over here, we have no problem if we are logically found fallible to reassess the situation, admit to being wrong, and therefore move forward in our atonement. It's all we can do. You know what I'm saying? Because once you've made a mistake, it's already been made. What defines you is how you carry in the way in which, and the fact that you are consistent. So that being said, let's just talk a little bit about it, because like I said, it was a real cool interview for the most part, especially coming from Jessie Lee Peterson. And like I said, the fallen state, I believe the show was mostly about like addressing the state the United States is in, and when he mostly comes from the lens of women are running the community, as you can see in the black community, and you see where the black community stands, especially in the open in the open media, how we're looked at and perceived. A lot of it we have to be respectable enough to admit that, yeah, a lot of it we have to own. But we also got to make sure that paradigm is fair, logical, truthful, logical, and consistent. You can't change up the paradigm And for one person change up the rules of the game, saying, "Oh, but we're playing the same game." But bro, you just changed up the rules. You've moved the goalposts now. You have to be fair and respectable. One thing I don't like is gentlemen that go search for pages that only vomit the same shit that they say to themselves. Because then if you're only listening to people that don't challenge your views, then you're basically looking for people to just only co-sign you. And that's not respectable. That's not consistent. So if that's the lens you're looking at, because I can only meet you where you're at, then that's all that needs to be said. And he also has like very staunch beliefs that the woman should follow the man, things of that nature. He doesn't believe in I guess the trans movement, for lack of a better terminology for the moment. He believes men are men and women are women. He actually says it, quoting from Archie Bunker and the All in the Family intro song. That being said, for him to not be so antagonizing towards this guest, the way you would see him in any of his other shows, is quite fascinating. I will have to you have to also understand that there is another component to it. It's the guest, and I'm not gonna lie, this guest was honest. I actually talked about gender dysphoria, like legitimately acknowledging its existence and being very self-aware, and saying what seemed to only have been truthfully and honestly, and for the most part direct, and where the guests may have, I don't want to say danced, but when you ask someone something direct and they answer it some kind of else way to get around to it, but then you ask them, and sometimes, to be fair, there's a reason why. That's why you have to listen to what they say to see what kind of dance they're having. And when you see them dance around it, then you're like, yo, someone's asking you something very direct. And Jessie is also the same perpetuator of that. When you ask him certain things directly, that would make his whole case fall apart. Now, let us begin. He goes and, they start off the interview, like I said, fairly well. To be quite honest, he kept probing the situation, whether or not like, are you a man? What bathroom you should use. And I'm not gonna lie, the guest actually said, well, I'm not gonna lie, if it makes other people uncomfortable, then I'd just rather find a restroom someplace else. Why would I even want to be there? I want to be safe. Which is, to be fair, that actually makes sense, because it's everyone's pushing back on that. Then why are you fighting to be in there, to use it? If you don't feel comfortable because they don't feel comfortable with you in there, then I guess that's that. And that's how they looked at it. And I found it to be interesting that they'd even be that type of self-aware. Because if we're worried about the feelings of others, and that's the argument, then we should worry about the feelings of others with respect. You got to be fair with the law. Like, if you're going to say unless you're going to say then there's a bathroom for everyone, then that means that there is no defining line, there is no separation. But the one hard separation we make universally amongst all people is the separation of men and women. That's a biological fact, and you can see it express itself from dress codes in all um, forms of businesses, because usually the women either have to or they can wear a skirt or a or pants, and that's not has nothing to do with what gender you claim. Like, these are, it'll be in the lines. Now, if you're transgender, that's when, like, we have to make rules specifically so you can operate outside that, because to be quite frankly, on paper, black and white, you're kind of playing in between both. That, so you cannot get mad or offended. At least this is where I come into it. That we have to have these debates, these conversations, these even arguments. You might want to attribute it, well, they separated the races from the bathrooms. Races where no one else has ever even needed to. Because then now you would have to separate something to say, and we've already seen that with Jim Crow. So what they decided, what they had no choice to do, if you're trying to integrate, you're not doing it with other people from different cultures and countries. You're only doing it to one race of people that you've already subjugated coming back into the situation. So it's very different. You can't really compare the two. Because even amongst the slaves, there was a hardline role shift between men and women. Whether you're dealing with the chattel slavery of the United States to the practice and the system of the slave system, and all across the world, they still had a defined line of roles in which they would play, the type of labors that they would have to be exploited to do. So even when you assimilate them, you don't have to teach them the difference. They already know. That's something acknowledged across all cultures and nations and tribes of people. That said, it was refreshing to see someone acknowledge it, so there was no need for it to be very antagonizing in conversation. I can even respect Jessie Lee's position on that. But now if we fast forward to, and I'll insert a couple of clips to show you what I mean, how he, especially with certain guests that have one thing in common. He had a gay pastor up there, and he kept probing him about what he says. Well, you're a man, or you're a woman inside. And he did make it extremely clear that he was gay. Now, he kind of soft-shoot it. How you doing? He kind of soft-shoot it, so I can understand, look, I'm asking you something very direct as men. You're a man. He's like, yes, that's what I believe. Nah, just say, like, if like we're being directly. But I'm not. But now you have to understand. Listen to how Jessie deals with all his interviews. You see what he's trying to box you in, because he does the same thing all the time. He's gonna come to you where he feels like he can really get you at about, in this case, homosexuality, like he did the transgender person. Now, this guy was a pastor, which opened up the floodgate for him to really come at you a certain kind of way, to really make you look stupid, because this is what he's trying to do. His whole show isn't really so much about conversation, it's to see how you will react, and to see if you're dishonest. And he uses inflammatory words, especially when he's with black people. The first thing he likes to say is, "Oh, I'm just a dumb black guy." He says that just to see what you say. Because what was the point in doing that? Because he does it all the time. Especially if he notices that you're not easy to fall for his shit. Then he tries to go for your wife like he did with the pastor with his wife when they brought him up to interview the pastor and his wife. And basically what he was trying to interview them for, he exposes what the interview is about. He'll try to see if he's so staunch in the woman should follow the man by the way of the Bible. But he doesn't exactly quote it. So when he's with someone that actually can quote and source certain shit, watch as he did with the black Israelite, how he danced around it. Because them brothers will, one thing them brothers is about it is that book. They know the book better than you. Don't meet them at the book. So he'll try to meet them in certain spaces where he can find gray. Like when they were referring to the Jews being black. Then he would try to find ways to not only make you say something negative about the white Jewish person, he'll imply, but he'll try to make it seem like you have hate in your heart for them. When the brother clearly said, I love everyone. But I'm asking about white people. When he says everyone, that includes white people. He's trying to take everything else off the table. You're specifically trying to put him at odds with white people on your show. So if he could say anything that could slip, now you're going in for the kill. Your show is all about trying to make someone look bad and look like an ism. But what I would say is the adverse to what's already implied in any ism, such as when we hear racism, we already know what that would imply, white people towards black people, which directly, if you look at the word in this broad sense, it really has nothing to do with it being white versus black. It really just has everything to do with a race versus any race. So in objectively, anyone could be racist, but we only see it through the subjugation because we've only had one instance of that run afoul in the worst volatile of ways, and it was when it was whites on blacks, who's actually been created the labeling of the word in practice. So we already think of it. That's why you would say something as asinine as reverse racism, because you know it's been only defined one kind of way, and it was only in practice. It wasn't like other people said this. No, it was in practice. You practiced this legitimately. You created the system. So it was subjective in creation, but still broad in its label. Subjective in its creation, broad in its labeling. So if you feel a way that is, when it's implied, it's only sort of one way, it was because it was created out of your subjectivity. It was very subjective. It was creative out of a subjective manner, hyper subjective manner, that you created the system out of. That, in a broader sense, to be honest, anyone can. But you've created its labeling. You defined it a way no other people could ever have. That said, he'll try to find a way to make it black versus white. So when the brother says, I love everyone, that's not enough. I gotta ask you about white versus do you love white people specifically? Because then if you even say, yeah, I do, then you're gonna try to make him look bad in front of his people to say, oh, so you love people, so, and then he's gonna probe deeper. He's gonna want to go there with you, because his objective is not to really interview you, who you are. It's to find out or find your flaws and exploit it. to make it look like that defines you. And it'd be different if you oozed it. It's different when someone's hunting you down for it. Because then in protecting yourself, you may make a mistake and say something. That's why these people are very reserved. Many people are very reserved when they're interviewed by them. They are very, it's easy for them to say, what do you mean? Because they want to know where you're going with it. Because every question is going somewhere that you're leading them towards. I say, will you be interviewed by him? Just let him take you there. Say, yes, I do. Yes. Answer him directly, cold-blooded. Don't even give him context. Because he don't care about your context, to be quite honest. Because someone that's interviewing you will be interested in your context. Not lead you down the same questions you ask everyone, because then you know what that is? It's not an interview, it's interrogation. And that's what he does to a certain set of people. If you pay attention, most of his interviews that run afoul is only with one. There's usually one thing they all are. And even the ones that may end up decent, pay attention to how he talks to each and every one, and I'm sure you'll find an interesting commonality. And I'll probably make it part 2 if I don't circle around the commonality at the end of this. But my point being is because I didn't want this to be that long, but I felt like I had to drop a lot of context, and I may have to, and I'll show you all the videos you need to know to understand what I'm saying when I watched the interview with the transgender person. And the funny thing is, I watched that one first. That was a funny thing. Then I watched what came up on my feed, and then I ain't gonna front the one where the pastor got it but left. I just wanted to listen to it. And it's funny though, when the guy asked him about him being homosexual too, I kind of was curious myself by the way he spoke. So what he was supposed to do was own it from the rip. Especially if you open already, own it from the rip. Don't play with the words. Even though you couldn't be mad. Even at one point I was like, bro, answer it directly. Because I was like, yo, you're going to fall for the trap. And then you're going to make him kind of right in this instance. Because he's asking you direct questions. And you're kind of not giving it up direct. But when I listened to a couple other interviews, it was like I could see why you maintain your reserve in answering every question, because he's only really asking you one. So you want to know where you're going with this. What you should have did was just, and my cousin, I gotta shout him out, because in another conversation he's kind of said this too. Just go there. You know what, that's what I'm gonna give you what you want. And that's what you were supposed to do. Give it to him cold-blooded. So he wouldn't even know where to go with it. Because then he'd be like, you gave it up smooth. And then own everything. Because what he wants is that conflict. He wants to make you look bad. Don't look at it as, if you're not living in contradiction, you wouldn't be afraid to go there. Think about it. If you don't live in contradiction of everything that you're saying, then you should not be afraid to go there. The sad part is he'll stand on that. He could stand on it because you seem dishonest for not answering directly, where if you watch enough of his interviews, you can know why someone would be a little reserved in answering him direct, because it's like he does find a way to try to twist your words by making it seem like you implied something else. And then it becomes more of a debate than an interview. It becomes interrogation. not an interview. He interviewed the transgender person. I found it interesting between the gay pastor, the husband and wife pastor, and I even seen it with Lunel, but Lunel was better at it. She kind of, and I think that was a comedian in her. She gave you what you want, so he couldn't go nowhere with her, even with her. Even with her. And I think didn't he interview Lunel and Tommy Sotomayor together? Because if I'm not mistaken, matter of fact, let me look that joint up right now, because I'm going somewhere with this. I am going somewhere with this. I think I need to know this right now. I can't even punch that in. Lunel. Yeah. Yeah, it was Lunel, Tommy Sotomayor, and Jessie Lee, because I remember listening to what Tommy said, and I thought it was the smartest thing because he paid attention to Jessie Lee. He said he wanted me to get fired up, but I didn't give him that. And if you look at Lunel off top comes off just like the type of women Tommy doesn't too care for. So he would try to put the situation at odds. But Lunel was chill. She's a comedian. And because Tommy is a very jokative person, I think he's done comedy before, but he's not really a comedian. He's like, I wouldn't say a comedic podcaster. That's what I'm more inclined to say. Not so much shock jockish, but a little bit of that too. And he knew how to. You're not gonna have me looking like no caricature of myself. I think the pastor, husband and wife, did very well with that, but that needs a certain specific video. What I will say, just to round this one all the way off, is that for all those Jessie Lee Peterson fans and a few people of scriptures and all of these type of things and whatnot, and if you guys are logical, follow the book and things of that nature, you'd have to agree that if you could watch that transgender interview, though, still, and how he dealt with that, and how he handled, and you still have to look at how the transgender guests handled the interview as well. You got to also look at the guests, and I still stand on that. Even the guests, in the Lunel, his interview with Lunel, his interview with the two pastors, the husband and wife, and with the gay pastor. That led to the gay pastor walking off. And listen to the stuff that Jessie Lee says after the fact. And he'll make it look like, oh, you couldn't handle the interview, when no, like I could see why someone would leave. You almost wasted my time. I thought you came to interview me. And it seemed like you're interviewing for something very specific. And they didn't know that's what they were coming there for. But I also argued you guys must never have watched any of his prior interviews, because you should have expected that and only that. You should have came there for that. When you come to Jessie Lee, you should come looking for smoke. Amara La Negra, he did it with her. Even she was like, she almost thought he wasn't real. You have to watch his show, because he only does one kind of interview, and he has the same exact line of questioning. So if you're not interviewing them, and with respect, you have to wrap it around your show, which is about the fallen state. My question to you is, if it's about the fallen state of America, why are you interviewing these people specifically? Sometimes you got to look at the people that he's interviewing as well. Some of it makes sense. You know, men and women issues. So you interview husband and wife. You don't believe that a woman should be a pastime. That's what it seems like he was assuming, or he might have even implied heavily. Then your whole interview would be about their validity. You know what I'm saying? So would bring it around to that, of course. But then don't say you're exactly interviewing them. Because if I'm interviewing them, I would have had like at least a dossier of what you've done, your accomplishments, and asked you about your accomplishments. And asked you like, oh, all right, so your husband, wife, pastor. Now, it's not defined in the Bible that a woman should be a pastor. How do you find that resolved being a husband and wife pastor? And then you let them ask the question. That's someone that's looking to ask them that. And then if they seem a little vague, well, if you may, then can you tell me, is it exactly in the scriptures? That's all I want to know right now. And then you can add in afterwards, but please first answer, is it in the thing first? And then you can explain to me why you still do it. That's where you're supposed to lead the conversation, so you can answer it, but also give me the thing. And then I will make questions out, because I'm interviewing you. I'm not interviewing you about something very specific, because if I am, then I would like to interview you specifically about this. You know? So my argument could easily be, well, were the guests aware? But I don't really think they were, because he says, I'm interviewing you. And some of them be like, well, I thought you was interviewing me. It just seemed like we couldn't even get off, like with the gay pastor, you couldn't even get off of that. You could argue that he didn't answer it directly enough, but even when you kept probing him, he still answered you. Like he did say, well, I am gay and I am a man. You know, like, I don't know what you're trying to, he was like, oh, so are you a woman inside? And it was like, what the fuck is that? Oh, I just want to know because I'm a dumb black man. What? Now you're just trying to get a rise out of him. Like, what the fuck is that? You never called yourself a dumb black man to the white transgender female. So why was it the only way to go with anybody that was black plus whatever you're going at them for? That's when I'm talking about consistency. When you see someone consistently tailor the way they quote unquote interview, or even their interrogation tactics, and it always seems to favor a certain kind of way. Either people that totally agree with you, no matter what demographic, or it seems that you handle the interview very differently with other people. But I like to think you know what I'm trying to imply, but since we're being full transparency on the Bundy, we keep it straight, no chaser. I found it interesting the white transgender guess you didn't use the same type of tactics. But I'll be fair, this was one of the very few transgender people I've ever seen on any show that kind of didn't do too much dancing, kind of answered the broad question, and then took it back to a subjective place. It made that person seem a lot more self-aware. I'll give credit to that. But I also, it'd be a lie to say that even though they seem very self-aware in the interview, no matter, really listen to what the other, from the pastors that said to the gay, homosexual, to anybody else, when they, even if you probe them and they answer it, and sometimes you'll even catch them say, well, I did answer it. It might have took them a minute, but they still answered it. You're still trying to move the problem deeper, and you might change it elsewhere because you're trying to follow them somewhere else. And you don't do that with anyone. When someone finally answers you a question that you've already approached the interview different with, it just seemed different. But you let me know, man. We're gonna I'm gonna put adjuncts to this, and I might make this a part 1 because I wanted to talk specifically to this in general. But then, yeah, I'm gonna make it a part 1 and make it a full series, so you'd have to watch the rest and all come back around. But this one was just springing off of what I noticed watching the transgender or transsexual guests. But let me know what you guys think, and please watch all the videos, because this is still all focused around Jessie Lee interviews or interrogation. You let me know. Bundy.